This section will cover computer firewalls. What are firewalls? Firewalls are barriers for computers. They separate one network from another by only allowing access between networks via a single point. Firewalls can create a barrier of defense for your computer from the internet. Computers communicate to each other via network ports. Firewalls monitor these ports and only allow computers to access yours which you grant access to. Firewalls can block intruders from trying to gain access to your computer. In this section, we'll be looking at a free firewall software.
Firewall software. Firewalls. Firewalls are barriers between computers to limit communications. They can be used to block unauthorized communications. They can also block incoming and outgoing communications. How computer connections are unsecure. Well, computers use ports to communicate with other computers. Viruses or malware can connect to remote computers, and unsecure applications are listening to ports, such as FTP and Telnet, which might be sitting on your machine, accepting communications from other computers. How can you prevent remote connections? One way is having no internet connection at all. Another is to use a firewall, or in some cases you can use a router. What are some of the components of firewall software? Typically there's some kind of network traffic watcher that watches all network communications. And another thing is rules. Rules will allow certain applications to be rejected or allowed to communicate with the internet. It can also, the rules just specify what applications have access or not. Here's some popular firewall software. We'll be looking at the first one, a Shampoo firewall. An easy way to get the software is if we just go to download.com and do a search. And this is what it looks like. Just click on download now. Go ahead and save and run. And select language. That's the welcome screen. Just click next. Read through, agree to the license. And just some additional information. Click next. Specify where you want to install it. Next. Just some options of icons. Click next. And finally, now it's ready to install. Click next. It'll actually copy the files. And this will require a reboot. Click yes. After reboot, it'll just look like this. It might have an icon over here. Earlier we installed the file hippo. This dialog will actually be from the firewall we just installed. It'll detect file hippo trying to access the internet and will ask us, do we want to allow or block this communications? In our case, we know what the software is and we want it to allow it to connect to the internet. So we can just click on apply to all ports, create a rule, and allow it. This way it won't ask us again. Typically after you install a firewall, there'll be a case, anything that tries to access the internet, it'll actually pop up and ask you, do you want this or not? For this, we just continue with doing a trial. Here, if you use the Internet Explorer, you can see what software is trying to access the internet and where. Again, Internet Explorer is something we use, so we'll allow it. If you do go out to their site, you can actually register and get a code to allow you to go beyond the 10 days. It's free. Put the code in here and just do the check code. And it'll be a valid code. Say OK. The configuration consultant will just help us set up how we want the firewall to work. Click next. Just use easy mode is one way to do it. Click Next. It'll just ask you about applications and whether or not you should allow them. Outlook Express is something that accesses the internet, so click yes, we want that one to have full access rights. Click Next. So we'll just apply. And now what will happen is anytime we run an application that tries to access the internet, we can either allow it or reject it to access the internet. Spybot search and destroy is an application which will go to the internet, and when it does, the firewall will actually say this application is trying to do it. Do we want to allow it? And again, this is something we would want, so say yes, allow. And that's pretty much it. Now we have a firewall that will be watching and monitoring what applications try to access the internet, and we can either allow or reject it. Just to review, firewalls protect our computers from the internet. Firewalls can block applications from connecting to the internet, and it just gives you better control of what applications can access the internet.